Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again today because we are going to talk about a Star Trek book. I know, surprise, surprise, we're back again. We've read The Brave and the Bold, which, if you've been following along, was not what I planned to read. I was going to jump directly into some Klingon goodness, the IKS Gorkon series, right? But then, thank goodness to the author, as I started to read it, had a little historian's note at the beginning. It was like, this book is a sequel to The Brave and the Bold Book 2. I'm like, oh no, now I have to read The Brave and the Bold Book 1. Then I have to read The Brave and the Bold Book 2. And then I can read IKS Gorkon. Oh no, now I have to read more Star Trek books. What are we going to do? Actually, this was a great little detour. And it kind of fit in perfectly with kind of the short stories that I had been reading previously too, because this was, well, first off, this is again The Brave and the Bold by Keith R.A.D. Candido, and this was originally, in his mind, was going to be a book series that would span 6 books, would cover all of the series, would feature all these different team ups, but then it kind of got the idea got instead kind of pushed down into this duology, which basically contains 4 stories, plus a little bit here and there. So, and again, we finished up the first 2 just yesterday. So let's jump right into the back of the book here. An all new adventure spanning 3 generations. The Malkus Artifacts. I love that name too, Malkus. The Malkus Artifacts. 4 deadly machines wielded as weapons of absolute power by an interstellar tyrant thousands of years ago and scattered across the Alpha Quadrant when he was overthrown. After their existence was discovered in 2151 by Captain Jonathan Archer of the Starship Enterprise, all Starfleet vessels were warned to keep an eye out for these most dangerous devices. Star Trek, The Brave and the Bold, Book 1. 100 years later, Captain James T. Kirk of the USS Enterprise and Commodore Matt Decker of the USS Constellation come across the first artifact on the colony world of Alpha Proxima II, a world ravaged by a mysterious plague. As the crews of 2 mighty vessels work to find a cure and locate the artifact, 2 brave captains must bring order to Proxima before it's too late. 100 years after that, Commander Benjamin Sisko of Station Deep Space Nine enlists the aid of Captain Declan Keogh of the USS Odyssey, Galaxy class, to help construct a farming colony on Bajor's second moon. But the colony is placed in jeopardy when the Bajoran terrorist Orda discovers the second artifact and threatens destruction on a massive scale. So again, like I was saying, you've got 2 stories plus a little intro here, and again, it's a very there's a very specific theme that the author is going with for. Well, I know definitely for these first 2 stories. I'm assuming that this continues on, and that theme is to take a crew that we don't really know about, but we do know that they've all died, right? So we start right with the Constellation, right? And what we know, from Star Trek, from the episode where Matt Decker and we learn about the Constellation, is that Matt Decker, in an effort to save all of his crew, beamed them down to the the 3rd planet in that system, right? Which was then destroyed by that colossal machine, right? And so this story then gives you that it basically first off it introduces all these characters to you, and then gives you, I don't know, it gives life to what before you didn't really know about. You just saw, Commodore Decker, you saw his reaction, but then with this story here in this book, it adds a whole new level to that, right? You get to meet the crew of the Constellation. You laugh with them. You go through struggles with them. You get to see them interact with your favorite characters from the Enterprise, and it just kind of builds up this whole I don't know, this whole, I guess, idea in your mind, right? That here's this whole crew that they have their whole lives, their adventures, and in the story, or in the, in the show, you don't learn anything about them. But then, they're given some life here in this story. So, and then the second book, or the second story in this book, it does the same thing for the crew of the Odyssey. So of course that is from, I think we're going right back to the beginning of the Dominion War here, right? Um, their first attack, they destroy New Bajor, they destroyed the Odyssey, um, and then this story is going to give you, you're going to learn about the crew. You're going to learn about the captain, you're going to learn about the first officer, and you're going to, kind of develop a, I guess, you're an interest in their story more, right? When before, you just didn't know. They were just, like a little bit, but then with this, it really fleshes all of that out and kind of adds a little bit more weight to that, right? And then on top of all that, you have this kind of interesting dynamic there where they're, like I said, just kind of revisiting all of these tragedies and then kind of giving you more to bring to that, right? But then they have, of course, the Malkus Artifacts, the kind of the binding thing that's going to hold everything together. So they are going to be 4 artifacts, right? And 4 stories that we're going to deal with here. And each one of them, of course, will be dealing with that artifact, one of that particular artifact, and something they have to do, right? And again, I like how they did this and how these stories are going to go ahead and I'm pretty sure going to cover every series. And they even went ahead and in the beginning of this one included kind of the intro is from Enterprise. And the crew of the Enterprise is the ones that kind of first encounter these artifacts, right? And now it's like, okay, so if anyone else in the future encounters these, we're going to call it General Order 16. You immediately have to get this thing, you got to put it into custody. These are very dangerous artifacts, right? Basically, each one of them can, rain devastation in one way or another, and we'll kind of get into that. So, it was a good way to introduce it again, and it makes me think, too, that there was probably a whole book planned in the Enterprise era, right? Just, if it would have had been a series of 6 books, there probably would have been 1 book for each series, and then maybe like a kind of like a wrap up or something like that, right? So anyway, very fun, very interesting, and again, just another way to add a lot more depth to just kind of some things that you see in the show that are just kind of touched upon, right? Let's get into the stories a little bit more because there are two very interesting stories here. The first one, again, is the first meeting of the Enterprise and Kirk, and him meeting the Constellation and Matt Decker, right? They're both called to this planet where this plague, has broken out, and they have to deal with that, right? And the plague is kind of very different. It's not spread like any normal plague. It just seems to pop up. All of a sudden, boom, here a group of people have it. And then a little bit later, over here a group of people have it. And then what? Let's gather all the government together to see what's going on. Oh no, boom, now all the government has it too. So again, Starfleet has been called in. And it's an interesting dynamic here too, because they have to, or they decide basically, that declaring martial law is like pretty much the best thing they can do. And if you know your kind of Star Trek history, and this is brought up here in the story too, Kirk was brought up on under the martial law of Kodos the Executioner. And I won't go into all that, but basically he saw martial law done the wrong way, and he wanted to do it the right way, right? So between him and Decker, they have to get order to the planet, while Bones and the doctor of the Constellation, Dr. Rosenhaus, they are working to find a cure for the virus, right? So that's kind of the dynamic here too. Oh, there's also a very, very funny dynamic between the science officer of the Constellation, whose name is Masada, and Spock. And it's almost where Masada can kind of see what we all can see with what Spock is really doing and how he's kind of like, he's running Kirk and Bones through it, right? Like he's acting like he's serious, and you're like, and you guys all know what I'm saying, right? But it's just great. Like he's cracking up. He's like, Spock, you're hilarious, and Spock's just kind of like, he's kind of taking it out on him too, and he's like, well, you know, I have no idea, what you're talking. And it's just a very good dynamic, and honestly, probably out of the three, and that was kind of the focus of the first story. You got, Decker and Kirk, Rose and House and McCoy, and then Spock and Masada in their kind of stories and how they interact. And I think that I really enjoyed seeing kind of Masada play against Spock's character in that. So, of course, in the end, they do solve the problem. They find a cure for the plague. They're able to track down the culprit who has done this. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, it just turns out to be a disgruntled person who turned down for a position that they rightfully wanted, found the artifact. The artifact kind of tainted their mind, and then they started using it to, exact their revenge upon this planet, right? Just, interesting story, and like I said, fun dynamic. And then, the Constellation goes about its way, the Enterprise goes about its way, and then you get a little interlude where you have Kirk talking about Decker and the Constellation after, he's passed and everything and all that. And I thought that was just, again, it just kind of brings more life to that episode and that whole story, right? So the next story, Deep Space Nine, we got a Deep Space Nine related story with the Odyssey. And I guess the Odyssey always kind of intrigued me because the Odyssey looked like the Enterprise, right? It's a Galaxy class starship, and it was crazy that basically to show, and I get it too, it was like to show the Dominion's strength and power and just kind of like a gut shot, right? Boom, they come in and they blow up the Odyssey. It's like blowing up the Enterprise, right? And then this story, of course, gives you that background, right? And there's a good bit of back and forth between Dax and Captain Keogh of the Odyssey, which is good. There's some fun play there, and he's a real hard ass kind of guy too. His first officer, though, and I swear I cannot say this name, Shabalala. It's a mouthful. But anyway, I enjoyed this character as well, too. He kind of plays... He's kind of the one trying to, he knows who the captain and is kind of what his attitude is. And he's the one kind of, fixing everything, trying to make everything right, basically. Kind of going behind him, right? And that's kind of what a first officer is supposed to do, be that kind of liaison for the rough captain to the crew. So, and again, we're just getting to meet these characters, learn more about them. You get to meet, I mean, those are like the main two that they talk about there. But the general purpose of this story here is they are trying to bring farming to one of Bajor's moons, right? So they have to bring the Odyssey in. The Odyssey is going to blast it with some phasers. They're going to turn that moon rock into soil, over a period of time with specific processes. And in order to also help do that, they are going to bring in this kind of old Bajoran freedom fighter / terrorist / Cardassian killer, Orda, to help with the process and become a farmer, basically start to give back in a different way since the fight is over, right? So they bring him in, and lo and behold, when they're farming down on that planet, what do you think they find? They find a gosh darn Malkus artifact. Yeah. And this is okay, so the first Malkus artifact, anyway, these things, they just look like cubes. And in this part too, part 2 of this part 1 of the book, they do actually go and give you a little bit of an intro as far as how these things were created and what, is there any power still after them, And there is. It turns out that there is the creator of the artifacts, this very, powerful scientist from 1,000 years ago, created these for Malkus. It goes over the whole story, and I won't go into that with you all. But anyway, she is still alive, still seeking the artifacts, and kind of weaves her way in and out of the story. So, there's some interesting stuff done there. But again, they're down there farming. They find the Malkus artifact, and this is the artifact that disintegrates people. So as soon as this dude Orta gets it, it kind of poisons his brain a little bit first off, and then first thing he does is he kills one of his friends, and then his other two friends are like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And he kills them too. He takes Kira, Kyo, and Dax hostage, and his plan is to attach this Malkus artifact to the runabout and use it to wreak destructive havoc upon the Cardassians, right? But it turns out that's not going to be as easy as planned. When he tries to enact this plan, the shuttlecraft's basically the automatic defenses kind of kick in, something that they've been planning for, since there's been more trouble on Deep Space Nine, and they're able to stop him, recover the artifact, and continue to do the project they were supposed to do, right? So, again, both of the stories, they don't have, like, huge stakes, especially, like, with the second one, I feel like it was almost, like, fairly easily put down. There was no big adventure to stop it. But really, that's not what the main story here is, either. And the main story here is to kind of, first off, they're just driving this narrative of, do you remember this ship? Well, it was filled with all these great, wonderful people. Let me tell you about them. Let's laugh at their jokes. Let's learn about them and kind of, you want to hear more about them. And then when we remember, oh my God, the Odyssey was destroyed by the Jem'Hadar. And then we're like, whoa, you remember Shabalaba? Remember Captain Keo and Dr. Rosenhaus on the Constellation? Anyway, so it's, again, interesting. It's a very fun book. I had a great time reading it. And now that I'm done talking about it, I can start on the second one. Fantastic. And I don't know what I did with it. I thought I had it here right in front of me so I could hold it up and show all of you. But the next one is going to go into, I think, TNG territory, and then Voyager territory, and then also Captain Clegg, Captain Clegg of the IKS Gorkon is going to be a major part of Book 2, too, which is the whole reason I'm here in the first place reading this, because I wanted to learn more about the Gorkon and its brave crew of Klingons. So we're gonna find out about that. But as for right now, we are done talking about the brave and the bold, and we're gonna put that down and get down to reading something else. Thanks for hanging out and listening. As always, my friends, live long and prosper. We'll see you guys in the next one. You have a good night.